Hey chillers, welcome back to my channel. So, it is Wednesday, which means it is spooky day. I'm sorry for the extreme lack of videos ever since my come shopping with me video, which I am wearing something that I bought. I've been extremely busy with work and just been tired and feeling like kind of sick on my stomach, but I will work on fixing that. Sorry, my sweater's a little tight. Alright, so today for Spooky Day, I am going to be reading scary black-eyed children horror stories. I found these on many different articles around the web, so let's jump right in. Number 1. Bus encounter. I was riding the bus back home after work. It was about 1 a.m. I'm a security guard and often work odd hours. So I'm sitting there and this guy gets on, sits across from me. He was wearing a suit, had a briefcase, regular looking guy, in his 20s. What struck me about him at first was that he was chewing a cigar, not smoking it. You can't smoke on the bus. So I was just looking at him while he stared out the window and chewed his cigar, and all of a sudden, he turned and looked at me. His eyes were pitch black, just as you described. I guess it was described on a video, or on the article, I'm not sure. My heart started beating like a madman, and I felt my gorge rising. I was starting to panic and I had no idea why. I was just really terrified of this guy. Then he grinned at me and his teeth were all covered in tobacco bits and brown juice. The cigar clamped between them. Ew! I almost screamed, but instead I had the presence of mind to just get up and take the seat right behind the driver. I calmed down a bit after that, but I kept an eye on the guy. He ended up chatting with some girl that got on, and they were still talking when I got off. I later convinced myself that he was just trolling me, having fun with a pair of contacts. Now I wonder. That's gross. Number 2. You must let me in. On March 17, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I had never heard of anything having to do with the black-eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside of a hairdresser's in an old Chevy pickup waiting for my mom to get her haircut. About 15 minutes had passed, and I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of my parked car. At first I thought I recognized him as one of my friends from school, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. It was not anyone I knew. At this point I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of my car and just stares. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes, to freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have never seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I locked the doors and dug down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got into the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had come into the hairdresser's and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God she did. Don't give them your keys. I have to turn my phone sideways for this one. It's a bit small. In 2010, a man known as Noetic, this one didn't have a title. This is number 3 though. Known as Noetic encouraged encountered two black-eyed teenagers outside his place of work. It was an ordinary July night in Ohio, and Noetic was in the middle of a night shift. Craving a cigarette, that's bad. I don't condone that. Noetic stepped outside the building and noticed 2 teenage boys across the street. As he smoked, he realized that the boys were staring at him. Weary, Noetic returned to the safety of his cubicle and tried to refocus on his work, only to see through the security cameras that the boys had appeared in front of his building, motioning for him to come outside. Fed up, Noetic went to the door, contemplating whether or not he should call the police. As if they read his mind, The boys insisted that such an action was unnecessary. All they needed was to use a phone. Noetic refused. He watched in horror as one of the boys continued to stare up at the security camera, while the other ventured to the back of the building, watching the cameras as though they could see what Noetic was doing. With frayed nerves, Noetic contacted the police, watching the teenagers on the video feed the entire time. When the officer arrived on the scene, he could not locate the teenagers anywhere, despite the fact that Noetic never tore his eyes away from the video feed. That's creepy. Okay, this is number 4. This one also doesn't have a title. These next ones don't have titles. One night, a man was dozing in the spare bed in his infant daughter's room when he heard a strange bump outside his house. Initially, the man thought nothing of it, believing it to be the family cat. But the thumps continued. The man checked the porch, but the cat was nowhere to be found. He then walked into the kitchen and found 2 figures loitering outside his front door. They knocked on the door. Both were boys, around 10 or 11, and gave off a pungent, moldy odor. "May we use your telegraph?" "Telegraph?" One of the boys said, looking up at the man. To his horror, the man realized both boys had eyes that were completely black. Ignoring the odd remark about a telegraph, the man told the boy he didn't have service in his house, and shut the door. As the man slowly made his way back to his daughter's room, the 2 boys thumped on the walls. The man clutched his daughter to his chest as the boys incessantly knocked against the window. Their eerie eyes and awful precision made the man too scared to fall asleep. He remained crouched on the floor of the room for several hours, fighting to ignore the knocks that occurred every couple minutes. The moment his wife's alarm clock went off, however, the knocking ceased, and the black-eyed children were nowhere to be seen. And number 5, the last one. In early November 2012, a woman was up late watching a movie with her cat when it suddenly leaped off of her lap. The woman was left stunned as she followed the cat into the laundry room, but the cat refused to leave from its spot between the machines. Suddenly, the woman heard knocks on her door and figured it was late trick-or-treaters. If it's early November, it's not trick-or-treaters. When she opened the door, it must have been like early on November, like October 31st. When she opened the door, the woman was met by 2 children, a boy and a girl. However, there was something strange about the children, who just stood there looking into her house, not wearing costumes or holding any buckets. The boy suddenly asked the woman if her cat had left, which aroused concern in the woman. Then the girl whispered to the woman, "We need to get inside." The boy was staring at her and grinning. Feeling fearful, she noticed that their eyes were completely black. The woman shut the door and called the police. The police only found footprints that led into the forest behind the woman's house. It wasn't until months later that the woman found a makeshift bed in her gardening shed. And that's the last story. Like I said, I found these on multiple different websites. All you have to do is just search Black-Eyed Children on Google and it'll pull up all kinds of different articles. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up so I know. Please follow all my social media down below in the description. And you can click my bell to subscribe to my channel, and my last video is right here. I will see you guys on Monday. Peace out, chillers.